Well, good evening and welcome to the Durango City Council. This is October the 16th. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Bettine.
Here.
Councilor Brookie.
Here.
Councilor White.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef.
Here.
And Mayor Marbury.
Here. And it's my pleasure tonight to introduce the Friends of the Library Bookmark Contest winners. And so, will the friends please come to the podium, and then you can tell the community about the bookmark winners and then call up the recipients.
Okay, my name is Miley Kane, and I am the president of the Friends of the Library. And this is Virginia Castle, who is the community relations manager of Maria's Bookshop. And we are co-sponsoring this very fun activity. The bookmark contest started because we needed to have some way to advertise our book sales, which, by the way, the next one is in November. And so we decided to have a bookmark contest to all the children in Durango. And it's one of our best activities that we really enjoy doing. And so about a week and a half ago, we had our judging and we came up with our bookmark winners. So I would like to announce them tonight to the City Council and to Durango. We're going to start with our elementary. And our elementary runner-up is Skylar Purcell. Skylar. Can you come on up here, Skylar? Isn't that neat? You want to turn around here so you can show the cameras? Ooh. And Skylar, do you want to talk about your bookmark?
Well, so I really like Charlotte's Web because I read it I read it a ton, and when I read it, well, I'm only in second grade, so but I'm on really high.
Well, good. Everybody can see it. It's a wonderful job, and in a year you get to keep this. But right now I'll keep it. Thank you, Skylar.
Skylar,
Forgot.
on behalf of Maria's Bookshop, I am so excited to present you with a $50 gift certificate so that you can keep reading.
And our runner-up is Asher, and I'm not sure I'm saying your name right. Jason?
That's right.
Oh, good. Right. You're welcome. You want to come here? We'll turn around, and can you tell me about your book?
I was kind of looking for a quote, and when I found this one, I knew it was just it was the perfect thing, and I love to paint pine trees.
I don't know if you all got a good look at this. It's
Could
wonderful.
you read the quote?
Can you read the quote?
Between every two pine trees, there is a door leading to a new way of life. John Muir.
Wow.
Maria's Bookshop is very happy to present you with a $50 gift certificate, and we can't wait to see you in there.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move to our middle school, and our runner-up for middle school is Anna Wiley. There's your poster. Oh, wait. Mistake. Okay, Anna, you want to come here and tell us about your poster?
Well, over the summer I read a book and I really liked it, so I decided to take this quote that I really enjoyed.
Can you read the quote for us?
Magic is just science we don't understand yet. T.E.T. Sutherland.
That's great. Okay,
And again, Maria's Bookshop is very proud to present you with your $50 gift certificate, and we can't wait to see you in there.
and our winner for the middle school is Sam Yeager. Sam? Jurgen. And we've been practiced before, huh? Okay, Sam, would you like to tell us about your bookmark?
Well, my mom actually gave me a quote, so.
Would you
I
like
probably should read the book. I like the quote, so.
Okay. And we have something from you?
Congratulations very much on your first place. We have a $100 gift certificate for you from Maria's Bookshop. So.
And then we're moving on to our high school. And our runner-up is Jasmine from... Hey, do you want to tell us about your bookmark?
Well, I've always found Hobbit and just J.R.R. Tolkien to be a great inspiration for me and taught me to be very adventurous. And I thought this quote, like when kids see it, just say like, "Hey, go adventure."
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for answering.
Okay, I have to say, were you doing all the runner-ups first and then all the winners, or are you doing?
No, she was the runner-up.
Because I gave away 3 runner-ups, so maybe if the winners and runners-up could, come on there. Yeah, maybe, so if you are a runner-up and you got a, green water bottle, that is perfect, and winners should have blue water bottles.
Okay.
Are you a winner?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, and this is for you. You're runner-up. $50 from Maria's Bookshop. Thank you.
Winner is Maya. Tell us about your bookmark.
So this is a quote from The Hate You Give, which is about a book about a girl whose friend is a victim of a police shooting. And I consider myself to be kind of a political activist. And so I found this book like super interesting, and it was like crazy inspirational. And this quote, it's brave doesn't mean it's not that you're not scared. It means you go even though you are. And it's just like, do what you want even if you're scared, and that's like that's what inspiration is about, I guess. So yeah.
It's a great book.
And again, Maria's Bookshop is very happy to present you with a first place $100 gift certificate. And don't spend it all on one book.
And for your winners, the bookmarks are going to have their debut at our book sale in November. And before that, I will give you some bookmarks for your own personal use. Thank you for coming.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to the Friends of the Library and congratulations to all the bookmark winners and their families. And I'd also like to say a special thank you to Maria's Bookstore for sponsoring this. They have been just such a pillar of our community, and especially with the children. So thank you so much.
I will say, we couldn't be happier to support this event. The duality of mixing visual art with language is really special to me, and I just love seeing all the kids here from our town. So thanks a lot, guys.
The next on my list is the National Code Compliance Month proclamation, and I will be asking Officer Steve Barkley to come to the podium. In the city of Durango, we have 2 code officers. Officer Barkley is one of those. And they go out on many calls and they respond to people making that call, whether it's a garbage can that's been overturned by a bear, whether it's a couch on the middle of the street. He answers the call, and we are so fortunate to have such dedicated employees for the city of Durango. And I'd like to read the National Code Compliance Month. Whereas code enforcement officers provide for the safety, health, and welfare of citizens living in communities throughout the United States through enforcement of building, zoning, housing, environmental, property maintenance, and other codes and ordinances. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, well-trained, and highly responsible individuals who take their jobs seriously, are proud of their department and local government, and are committed to promoting life safety and improving neighborhood aesthetics in the course of their daily jobs. And whereas the American Association of Code Enforcement, acting on behalf of its more than 1,300 members, requests that October be set aside to honor and recognize our code enforcement officers as an opportunity to highlight the contributions these individuals have made to the quality of our communities, to celebrate American accomplishments in making collective decisions concerning our cities and regions that bring quality and meaning to our lives, and to recognize the participation and dedication of code enforcement officers who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of communities throughout the United States. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the code enforcement officers throughout our country, and extend our heartfelt thanks for their continued commitment to public service. Now, therefore, I, Sweetie Marbury, Mayor of Durango, Colorado, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2018 as National Code Compliance Month. Officer Barkley. Thank you. Yes, I would like Officer Barkley to speak. Thank you.
Just want to thank the citizens, property owners, and staff and council that I work with on a daily basis for all the support, keeping our town safe, healthy, and clean. Thanks.
Awesome.
The next would be the Police Department activity update. And thank you, Chief, for coming to tonight's meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Mayor, Council. And I should get the date right, at least. I see, I put the wrong date on there. Nobody corrected me. I never talked to my staff. So just a little bit of background. So one of the things that the city manager asked me to do was to kind of identify some of the needs of the police department, give you some trends, and you know what the future needs are. But before kind of getting into that, one of the things I want to make sure is that I know the council understands that, but maybe not everybody in the community understands that the population growth that we have seen in La Plata County and the city. So these are some numbers that I just pulled up that from 2000 to 2015, the county itself saw a 24% increase, and the city at the same time saw a 30% increase in population from 2000. So that's a vast increase. City also starts as a county seat for this county government. There's a hub of employment. We have Fort Lewis College. We have a lot of entertainment that comes up here. On weekends, night, we have all the great restaurants that on Main Avenue that will come in. So even though our population currently is about 18,800 something, we serve a much larger community than our nighttime population. I think we're probably twice the number, and probably during summer times when the tourist season is in full bloom, we probably serve more people than that. And the future growth, I know at some point, this is more than a few years from now, that was potentially could double the population of the city. Things like Twin Buttes that has not even broken ground is going to be coming up. Three Springs, we already seeing some issues because there's some new construction, so we know there's some thefts going up on construction sites, but I think that's a quarter, maybe a little bit more than that built. So there are a lot more demand on police service coming in the future. Obviously new hotels, all the new apartments next to the Walmart that are under construction. So we can definitely see that even in the near future, we're going to have an increase in number of residents for the city. The county estimates that by 2040, their population is expected to be over 84,000 people. That's from current number, that's a 55% growth. That's only 22 years from now. I mean, that seems like a lot, but I think from a strategic planning, when we think about what we're going to do in the future, we're always looking 5, 10, 20 years down the line. So if you look at just if our population was the same as the the county, that means we'll have a population of about 29,000 people. And recent historical data that I found that says that our population has grown more than the counties. I don't know if this can be in the future or not, but that's at least what, that there's a high potential for that. So the future growth doesn't necessarily mean more crime, right? But one of the things we're going to go into in the future, in the next few slides about how a PD should be staffed, it really is not crime, it's about call for service. So when people pick up the phone because they need help, they expect a police officer to be there, and that's what we should look for. I came from a jurisdiction that grew up by 65,000 people in 24 years. Crime went down, but call for service went up drastically. We still have to go, so that's something that we just need to be mindful of. Some of the trends, this is before the recession, obviously, and recession, like every other city department, affected the PD also. So in 2007, DPD had 58 authorized sworn positions for a population of about 16,000 people, a little bit less than that. County population was a little bit less than 50,000 people, and we patrolled 9.85 square miles. And you'll see that we actually have doubled since that time from just the geographic area that we have to patrol, not necessarily the population. So the trends since 2010, so there are some things that are empty. Part of that is the data was a little bit corrupt and we didn't have enough time to look through the information to see what were the correct numbers. But you see from 2010 to 2017, the city's population on the second column, the square miles that the Durango PD patrols, and the county population. That is relevant because that does have an effect on the city, because that we do serve that population during daytime, definitely, a lot of that, and definitely during evening hours. And the call for service is very, very interesting. If you see in 2017, or from 2014 on, we have had a drastic increase in call for service. So I think that's about 11% increase on average between 2015 and 2017. So last year we were at 17,177 calls for service. The next one is the Part 1 offenses. These are serious offenses. These are things like murder, rape, robberies, burglaries, theft, aggravated assaults, arsons. You see the increase in that number also. It was 511 offenses in 2013. We peaked in 2016, and last year we kind of went down, and this year we are on pace to actually be below that number. Same thing, Part 2 offenses is everything else that we deal with. Quality of life issues, drunkenness, urination issues that we deal with, especially in the downtown area. So everything else that's not Part 1 offense, that's a crime. This is not traffic, it's a Part 2 offense. And even that, you see quite a bit of a jump. And then the last column is the number of officers that we have. And you see that we had, in 2010, 56 officers and went to 54, and then we have maintained 55 for the last several years. And look, the last year's number and even this year's numbers, the trends are positive because we're utilizing data to make sure that officers are patrolling the areas that they should be patrolling. So that has had some effect. This is just a 5-year serious trend offense list from 2013 to 2017. And 2017 number, and we look at 5-year average, we look at 1-year average. 5-year is a better indicator of what the actual rate is because you can have a good year, you can have a bad year, but 5-year should give you a good estimate. But this is something that we compare, our crime analyst compares data from both last year and 5-year average. So in 2017, we did really good. We were down almost 10%, and the violent crime was down 15%. 5-year comparison, violent crime was only 0.4% because we had pretty low violent crime in the earlier part of the year, and then so it didn't make as much of an impact. But again, it was a step towards the right direction with the current resources that we had. A lot of credit needs to go to the officers because it's the same number of people that we had. We even took some more people out of patrol to have our community engagement team to be able to address some of those long-term issues. And I think some of that is a direct reflection of some of the successes that our officers have had. This is what we have so far this year. Again, this is through September. September actually was a little bit higher month for us. We have a bit higher crime than the 5-year or last year average, but overall we're still, when we compare to the last year, we are about 2.8% down on our Part 1 offenses. There are certain categories that we are up. So you can see rape, sexual assaults, we are up quite a bit. I can't tell the reason, but hopefully it's because people are actually reporting, because that's one of the most underreported crimes that we had. So just because we only had 2 in last year doesn't mean that's what actually happened. That's, people are, victims are usually scared to come up front for a lot of different reasons, and, we want to make sure that they are encouraged to come and report the fact that they were victimized. But we are down 2.8% so far this year, and compared to 5-year average, we're down by 4%. What I don't have is actually traffic related stuff. We are down double digit on accidents, so that's how we kind of measure safety. We're down 25-30% on our accident rates, quite a bit. So we have, broken down into some of the needs that we have. Obviously, staffing. One of the things I want to explain is encumbered time versus unencumbered time. So the industry averages that you want to truly be a problem-solving kind of department, you want 30 minutes of unencumbered time per officer per hour. What that means is that that they have that time to be able to respond to the fact that they responded to call for service where someone was victimized. If all they're doing is going from call to call, they were never going to be proactively addressing things in a community. So that's the table that we use. There's a lot of debate, at least among the citizens, about using the population rate per 1,000 people or what have you. If you look at really urban areas, they will have 6-7 officers per 100,000 people, and if you look at some rural areas, it will have less. You really can't look at that. You look at a workload analysis. You look at call for service, time on traffic stop, and then look at how much time it took for an officer to complete that call, including report. Officers are always away on training because we have certification requirement, really stringent requirement from the state, and we always go above and beyond that to make sure guys are trained, and also then their time off. We have alternate duty. This is the fact that our officers get injured all the time in the line of duty, and that means they're on what we call light duty, but it's alternate. So when we take all of that, the current analysis that we did, which is based on 3-year average of call for service, was that we need 8 more patrol officers. I did not look at anything else. I didn't look at any specialty units, just the patrol. We looked at that we need 8 more patrol officers. I know that that's not going to happen in a year's time. There's a lot of budgetary concerns, but again, this is just information for the council to have. City manager already has that information because we did that back in April. Any questions? If you have any questions, please let me know. So that's the workload analysis that we did, and that's really the best indicator of how to really gauge what kind of staffing you need to have in patrol. So other challenges that we have from a staffing perspective is really full staffing versus functional staffing. So for the last year and a half, our Commander Warfield is in charge of this right now. Before that, Commander Shoup was in charge of recruiting, and Sergeant Slag. They've done a really very great job recruiting individuals, candidates to come in, and we have been in full staffing for most of the time that I've been here. It shows up in budget because our salary savings are nowhere near where they used to be. But functionally, I'm usually 5 or 6 down all the time, because that takes into account. So right now I have 1 vacancy. I can offer 1 job because that started a few weeks ago. But functionally I'm down 6 people. 3 are in training, 1 actual vacancy, and 2 are on FMLA leave. That's just reality of policing. That's why, to me, it's also important to understand that you do need to increase staffing, because that also, even when you are 6, whatever the number might be, if it's, somebody waves a magic wand and we get 8 more officers, in the near future, because of training issues, you're still going to be down functionally 5 or 6 people. But that still means you have more officers to be able to go on the shift. Yesterday was a prime example. We have 5 officers on swings, but because of the flu that's going around, I think a couple guys called in sick, and we had to hold somebody else from other shifts over. So we don't have a lot of flexibility because we're very lean, and most departments are very lean. Other challenges that we have is really on the retention issue is compensation versus cost of living. Now, from an entry-level compensation perspective for this region, we're very competitive. I think we are the highest. But we reduced, at least the last year and a half, we really haven't lost people to other agencies down here. We've lost them either to private sector, or to front range. We're offering a lot more money, and the cost of living is a lot cheaper. That is not something that I know that we can control. I'm sure if you had a magic wand, we will say housing prices would be a lot cheaper, but that's just reality. So I believe that our command staff and our supervisors do a really good job of training our officers, but that also there's a bad side to it, that they're very competitive. Right now I have 4 officers in our department in the front range. They're paying $90,000 starting salary. That's more than some of my commanders made. there's just no way that a city like, a region like us, forget about Durango, a region like us can compete against that. But that's just reality that we have. Stress of the job is another thing. You know, sometimes the national narrative is such that it doesn't really matter how good your local police officers are. And Airport Motemp, you had seen an interaction between one of my officers and a couple of my officers with an individual that needed help. That's who most police officers are. But, you know, one thing happens somewhere else, and, you know, it's a mistake on the PD's part that everybody is painted with the same brush. So it is stressful. I can tell you that over the years, we have less and less people who are applying to be police officers, right? Because there was a question about a person who came up here with a reading assignment that was a book about a victim of shooting. But the same officers who talk about that will take a bullet for everyone, and we expect that we're going to be line of fire for people. Not that we're willing to give our life up, but that's just part of the job, and people we don't even think about. You know, just like firemen go towards fire, and the shots are fired, we go towards shots fired. We don't do what's natural. We don't go away from that. We're like, where are shots coming from? We're going to go that direction. That's a lot of stress, and you see cumulative effect of stress. That's why a lot of cops, their suicide rates are high. I've lived through 3 suicides in my old department because stress got to those officers. So it's a stressful job, and you can make better money somewhere else doing a lot less stressful job. So this recent narrative is part of that. Other part of it is the economic opportunities for our partners of our spouses. So there are 2 people whose spouses didn't have opportunities here, so they went to an urban area where the spouses had, and that's just a reality for us. So we can do everything we can. Our city benefits are great. It's probably one of the best medical benefits that we have, very cheap. A lot of the officers at the front end, and I was one of them, look at the bottom line from terms of dollar and cents, and not looking at the benefits part of it. Okay, what's the salary? So that's a challenge for us that, you know, I know you guys work on it with the county commissioners and other people that I think should be continuing to work on. Logistically, I put down our police building is a topic of discussion these days. That, you know, I say it was inadequate when we got the building in 1980, let alone 2018. Our current needs are 45,000 square feet based on the study that the city did, and we have 15,000 square feet. There's no parking, so there's no secure parking area. That's another issue from there. We have to provide an environment that's workable for our staff, right? When people are in closets, they're converted into offices, or, you know, if we can't be walking in a hallway, 2 people can't walk properly, you have to, you know, turn a little bit so we can cross each other. But, you know, the police officers and the civilians who work for police departments are very resilient. They like their jobs, so they keep working at it. If you do that, if that kind of environment was for any other profession, I think you would have mass exits. That was definitely a thing that I noticed when I first got here. From a building perspective, we need to plan for the future, not just for tomorrow. Just don't think about 45,000 square feet. Think about where the city is going to, because if we do end up getting a new police building, and we should at some point in the future, let you guys, policy guys, figure out how to do that. We just should be thinking about what our current needs are. Think about in 50 years where we're going to be, because that building should be good for 50, 60 years. And then start planning for a new building after that. Other logistical issues that are not here are you know, crime scene lab that we have. You got to go through some other stuff to even get to that. Even the basic stuff, because we really don't have any, because, you know, you should have things like super glue, so you can get fingerprints off of surfaces that are not usual, right? They're not very porous, they're not very smooth. We don't have that ability. We're limited because you need a lot of venting. If you have been into a property section, the way we keep some of the evidence, that's very important. As my old chief told me, that's one thing that will get chief in trouble is if you don't manage the drugs that you confiscate and the money and the guns. We have them in 3 different places because we have no choice but to do that, because you need venting for the drugs. You need a space for guns to make sure that there's added security. We just don't have that right now. So again, these are some of the logistical issues that come from the top of my head. Last is technology, projecting our future needs. More and more, we're going to be relying on technology, because that can also work as a force multiplier. You already know that the city manager, you know, through a lot of his effort was able to find funding for body cameras, right? But that's just one part of the technology. There are things coming up in the future that, license plate readers, right? We don't have the infrastructure right now to be able to house that. That can read license plates at all times. If a stolen car comes up, it's there, and officer is notified right away. The financial crime industry, we are severely lacking from a technology perspective as to how to deal with white-collar crime. A lot of times we send them to federal partners, but they only deal with things that are very, very high level, right? But we still have victims that we are very limited because technology is very limited for us. It's expensive. You see the numbers. What's going to cost us just to have body cameras, right? And that's really not high-end technology. That's pretty rudimentary technology, but there are other things that are out and about that who knows what next 2 years going to bring, 3 years going to bring. So that's going to be a topic of discussion that we need to have about what the needs are for any police department to stay relevant in the 21st century. So that's really a brief overview of what the needs are. I'm open to questions, some trends, a lot of data I've given you.
I have one question, because I think this is relevant. I had a conversation with a friend from Albuquerque over the weekend, and I mentioned that, that we were looking for, building a new station, and he mentioned how many officers we have for the population. He said, gee, that's pretty high. And I didn't respond at the moment, and then I thought about it. I said, the crucial issue here is what is our population on a typical day, even during the winter, much less in the summer. And that clearly impacts the workload that your men have to deal with.
Yeah, it really is. It's workload analysis is what you have to do. It's not the number of people that are call your city home at nighttime. It is how many calls for service you have. The more call for service you have, you need to make sure that you adjust. Now, one of the downfalls of having an in-car camera system or body cams is that the officers are probably going to look at that camera video to make sure they're very accurate on the reports. And guess what happens? That time that we calculated last year in April probably is going to go up. One department in Virginia, in my old neighborhood, they went from an average of 21 minutes per call to 42 minutes. Because officers are taking reports. Now it's a pretty large department, and they don't want to seem come across from a report that they were untruthful. So they are now looking back at their video to make sure they get everything. Now we have talked about some things about verbiage that says please see video for full information, for exact quote, to minimize that, because you don't want to come across when you're not trying to be. I know our officers are not trying to be deceitful in their how they write reports, but the little thing can be utilized against them. So that's one of the things that departments really haven't analyzed. And I saw that study when we were almost to the point, but that's just a reality because we give our officers the ability to look at the video. But you're right; it's not based on the population, based on our call for service are almost at the level that our population is, nighttime population. That's unusual. That's really not necessarily normal because we're the hub.
Well, and also we have 20,000 people coming in at Snowdown, for example. Thousands of people were here for the celebration of the cowboy heritage, the poetry. This is a ski town. We have a college. We have a variety of visitors to our town, always. People who come in from out of town, out of state, out of the country. So your officers are doing an amazingly wonderful job. And we certainly appreciate this information and the update to show that, you need 8 more officers. That's what it really boils down to. And you need 45,000 square feet. And
currently we need 45,000 square feet.
Right.
I'm not sure what we're going to need in the future.
And a place to park vehicles and store evidence. It's really back to basics. And I want to thank you, Chief, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next is a Public Information Office, the award, an update. And would you please tell the audience who you are?
Yes, of course. Good evening, Council. Mitchell Carter, Public Information Specialist. I'm up here tonight to announce that Durango has been awarded 2nd place for best use of social media by the National Association of Telecommunication Officers and Advisors. Now, you may remember a year ago, I told you that we received an honorable mention for the same category, so I'm pleased to announce that we won an award this year. And so it's an incredible opportunity to be recognized nationally alongside communities that are much larger than Durango. Our office prides ourselves on sharing timely information to the community. So if you haven't already, I encourage everyone to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, join your neighbors on Nextdoor, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. While second place is exciting, you better believe that we're going to be gunning for the top spot next year. We already have some ideas in the works to get us there, one of which we've launched tonight. I'm proud to announce that we are now streaming city council meetings to Facebook Live.
my
That will
goodness.
increase our audience and hopefully get more people involved with local government. So with that, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
No questions, just some comments probably. Counselors, any comments?
Congratulations, I'm excited.
Thank you.
Well, absolutely.
Pleasure to work with you all.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thanks. Thank you so much, and it's always great to be recognized.
Yes.
We appreciate that, all your hard work. He's one of the men behind the scenes.
I'm gonna go play cameraman now, so.
That's okay. We are moving into a review of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to allow the city council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item to be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item number 6. Ms. Phillips?
Item 4.1 is approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of September 18th, 2018. Items 4.2 through 4.5 are discussion and possible action items. 4.2 concerns Resolution R 2018-41, supporting ballot question 2A. 4.3 concerns the submission of a CDBG grant application on behalf of Homespun, Inc. 4.4 concerns Resolution R 2018-42, authorizing the submission of a grant application to the State Board of the Great Outdoors Colorado Trust Fund for construction of Oxbow Park. 4.5 concerns authorization for signature of a reimbursement agreement between the City of Durango and South Fork Storage LLC per City Code Section 14-178B. Items 4.6 and 4.7 are requests for public hearings with the proposed date of Monday, November 5th, 2018. 4.6 is to consider the 2019 annual appropriations ordinance. 4.7 is to consider the 2019 proposed budget and highway user tax fund receipts. And item 4.8 is final approval of ordinance O 2018-22, amending and repealing certain sections of Article 3 of Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code and certain sections of Chapter 4 of the Land Use and Development Code to adopt and provide for technical revisions to the City of Durango Storm Drainage Design Criteria Manual and declaring an effective date.
Would any councilor like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
I'd like to remove item 4.2.
And I'll be removing 4.5 for the city attorney. I'll look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of item 4.2 and 4.5.
Second. Roll call, please.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bateen?
Yes.
Councilor Brookie?
Yes.
Councilor White?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. And I'm going to jump to 4.5 if you don't mind. 4.5, Mr. Nelson?
Yes, this is an agreement between the city and South Fork Storage LLC. The city has entered an agreement with them to upsize the size of a water main so that it will be able to serve future properties that are located between the current point of the main and the development at South Fork. There was an agreement in your packet that was done with the best information we had at that point. There have been a couple of minor changes to that agreement. We would like to go ahead and move forward with changes tonight. There was an updated version of the agreement on the dais for you to glance at. I'll quickly point out there are really 3 changes to the agreement. And this was is a result of working with the owner to fine-tune some things. Paragraph 4, second line, there's a comma added after city code, comma, There was the deletion of an item that says nothing contained herein shall limit the city's ability to seek reimbursement for amounts expended under the terms of the agreement from third parties who may benefit from the oversized line. I'll explain that in a moment. Then the other change was an addition at the last sentence. It says acceptance of the water main shall not be unreasonably withheld or delayed by the city because of this agreement. Effectively, the city's paying $21,144 to the developer to upsize that line. The city will be able to potentially seek reimbursement from future development, such as GRVP, to connect to that line. And this developer may be able to seek reimbursement for part of what they've spent to extend the line across properties that may be able to take use of it. So those provisions, again, are, my recommendation is that agreement be approved tonight so that we can move forward with that development.
Thank you very much. With that, then I will look for a motion to accept 4.5.
I make a motion to accept 4.5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef.
Yes.
Councilor Berkey.
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Mayor Marbury.
Yes. And Councilor White on 4.2.
4.2 is a resolution in support of the ballot issue 2A, authorizing an increase in city taxes for 25 years for the purpose of funding police, public safety, and code enforcement, the construction, operation, and maintenance of a police station and other city buildings and street improvements. And I think it's appropriate for me to simply read the resolution tonight. Whereas the city of Durango and the county of La Plata of Colorado, the city, is a home rule municipal corporation duly organized and existing under the laws of the state of Colorado and the city charter. Whereas the members of the city council have been duly elected and qualified. Whereas Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, also referred to as the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, or TABOR, requires voter approval for any new tax, any increase in any tax rate, the creation of any multiple fiscal year financial obligation, and the spending of certain funds above limits established by TABOR. And whereas public safety services are essential to the city of Durango, and whereas transportation infrastructure is essential to the city, citizens of the city of Durango. Whereas the current police station was constructed in the early 1950s and has exceeded its useful life, and whereas without ongoing maintenance, city of Durango street infrastructure will fail, and whereas critical ADA accessibility improvements must be made to Durango sidewalks and curb ramps to ensure the transportation system is accessible to all users, and whereas after an extensive public engagement process that included over 45 public workshops, 4 community forums, 3 community surveys, 1 statistically valid survey, and more than 5,000 public comments, the city of Durango residents clearly informed the city council to maintain what we have and to preserve the quality of life in the city of Durango. And whereas voter approval is sought at the November 16th, 2018 election for a ballot measure, question 2A, to increase city property taxes by 5.4 mils and increase city sales and use taxes by 0.55%, to be used for the purpose of funding police, public safety, and code enforcement, the construction, operation, and maintenance of a police station and other city buildings, as well as street improvements. And whereas revenues generated by this tax increase will be used to maintain and invest in essential public safety services and facilities and implement critical transportation infrastructure maintenance. And where it is the goal of the City Council to ensure a high quality of life for our citizens and meet the needs of future generations. Now therefore be it resolved, the Council of the City of Durango supports question 2A and strongly urges a vote of yes on this ballot question.
Thank you, Councilor White. Do you have any comments about the 2A at this time?
At this time, it's just that we have, the council is on record. We put this on the ballot. There is an op-ed in the Durango Herald that was published a week or 2 ago that explained the rationale for this at somewhat greater length, but even then, within the 750-word limit that one has there, there have been concerns raised about, oh my gosh, it's $200 million. Well, yeah, if you multiply 25 years, which is absolutely essential for being able to bond the cost of an expensive item like a new building. And there are other buildings that need similar needs. The Carnegie Building is 100 years old. It needs significant renovations if it's really going to be useful for city staff in the future, and so on. And last week we had a study session where staff documented a minimum of $2 million a year needed to just keep up with our streets, much less get ahead, which is our goal, because we've got streets that are on the downside of failing. And if they're not kept up and improved, they will get worse and worse, and then we'll have major reconstruction costs. And to get to that point needs about $4 million a year. Well, you multiply that by $25 million, and that's where you get $100 million. We're looking for supporting part of our cost of the police, our fire protection district contract. That altogether is $5 million a year. And you multiply that by 25 years, and you get a very large number. So the total cost is staggering, but that's what it takes to run the business. The city general fund is now $40 million per year. You take that number times 25 years, and the answer is $1 billion. It takes a whole lot of cash, which we all do year after year, to keep this enterprise going and to keep it at the level of very high satisfaction that our citizens experience. And our goal is to meet that goal. That's why we're asking the citizens to support this, which means all of us have to pay a little bit more every year. But at the same time, if you go to Carver's for supper and take a get a $25 bill for a burger and a beer, you're going to wind up paying an extra, I believe it's 12 cents. And the property taxes, we've heard the mayor's example multiple times in recent weeks.
Oh, I would say that the staff use my house, the assessed value. And based on the assessed value, I would be paying $13 more a month for the police department, for the fire department bill, and for, I'm perfectly willing, capable, and wanting to do that. I support the police department. I certainly support the street infrastructure needs. And you'll be hearing later from the rest of the city council our comments about 2A. So we're going to keep moving tonight. And Mr. Councilor White, would you make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve resolution R 2018-41.
I'll second.
And roll call, please.
Councilor Bateen?
Yes.
Councilor White?
Yes.
Councilor Bricky?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef? Yes. Mayor Marbury?
Yes. And I would just remind everyone to start at the bottom of the ballot. It's a very lengthy ballot that you have received. And start with 2A. Go local, shop local, and vote local. Public participation. This section of the agenda is set aside for the public to provide comments or ask questions regarding items that do not otherwise appear on this agenda. City Council will not respond to questions from the dais. Citizens should address their comments directly to City Council. Citizens wishing to speak during this section of the agenda shall sign in prior to the start of the meeting, identifying their name and address on the form provided at the meeting. Citizens will be called individually by name by the mayor to come to the podium to address the City Council. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. The city manager will signal 30 seconds remaining by raising his hand. Any audio-visual materials must be provided to the city clerk on or before noon of the day of the meeting. Lisa Bloomquist, please. And please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Bloomquist Palmer. I'm the Executive Director for Homes Fund. My address is 3202 East 6th Avenue in Durango. I'm here to talk about Homes Fund. Our mission is to provide educational and financial tools to the workforce so that they can achieve home ownership. And the way that we do this is through our Homebuyer Assistance Program, which consists of homebuyer education, homebuyer counseling, and down payment assistance. I was asked by the mayor to come and speak to council today and the audience about some milestones that we recently reached. So in 2018, we have sent our 2,000th person through our homebuyer education class. And with a population of about 55,000 people, that's a sizable portion of our population that has learned really everything that they need to know to be a sustainable homeowner. We go over things like budgeting and counseling and what they should expect and look for in a lender. Another milestone that we reached this year is that we provided mortgage assistance to our 200th household. We are actually now up to 215 households in the history of the organization that have received mortgage assistance. That the total amount for the mortgage assistance is more than $6.5 million, and that has leveraged more than $41 million in home purchases. That's 215 households in our community that now have stable housing, that now have that are not going to be displaced when the landlord raises rent and puts their house on the market. They're not going to be, they have a place where their kids can call home. There are all sorts of benefits to home ownership, and now those 215 households have those benefits. Now, we just saw the chief of police get up here and mention, really the disparity between wages and the cost of living in our community and how that's affecting the police department. Recently, the sheriff was also quoted in the paper saying something similar, that it's very hard to retain employees because of that gap. And if we could get those employees into home ownership, I think it will very much help them to stay invested in the community and stay stable in the community, stabilize their housing expenses and whatnot. And so that is really what our program seeks to do and what we have very successfully done over the last decade. We're not a one-size-fits-all solution, but we are doing our part and putting people into affordable home ownership. I also wanted to mention my thanks to those of you who came to our event last Thursday. It was a great event, and we appreciate your support, and also the support of the support of the community. It was great seeing everyone there. I also wanted to thank you for approving the consent agenda item of our CDBG contract, and also wanted to mention that there's another event that's coming up this coming Thursday. It's the groundbreaking for the Lumion 2 apartments, which are affordable rental apartments that are going in right next to the Lumion 1 apartment. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, and thanks for mentioning Lumion. Several of the city council will be there with Governor John Hickenlooper shoveling some dirt, so thank you. John Simpson?
Mayor Marbury, my name is John Simpson. I live at 1831 Crestview Drive. One of the most concerning issues that has arisen recently is what happens if 2A fails. Citizens have provided options to maintain our roads and finance the police station. You've been willing to engage in reasoned discussion and instead have chosen to react with emotion and exaggeration. Council has explained that the defeat of 2A will result in a reduction of city services. We can expect a reduction in snow plowing, street sweeping, and police patrol. Your 2A argument is that you need more money for capital projects, not for maintenance. Thus, the reduction of services is punishment for a vote you disagree with. The statement has been made that you won't use any increased revenue from Proposition 110 on the roads, rather you will use it to expand transit. This attitude has lost you many more voters than anything I have said. The misperception exists that the use of some of the future sales tax for public safety will result in elimination of promised recreation projects. Please keep in mind that you've already set aside millions of dollars that can be used for things like the $2 million shop, the $6 million trail to Oxbow, the tennis courts, the volleyball courts, and the trails. No one is suggesting that that money be touched. We are only asking that you consider asking the voters to reallocate a portion of the future sales tax in the April 2019 election. By asking the voters to reallocate only a small portion, say $2 million per year, to cover the debt service on a $30 million bond, for example, we could have a new police station and address the most critical infrastructure problems. There's a lack of trust in city government. Your willingness to reduce your ask may go a long way to rectify the problem. Another election in a few years could then provide funds for an additional projects. Much has been made of the voter support of the 2015 election. Prior to that election, no mention was made of the need for the police station or the infrastructure. These problems did not come on us overnight. The city manager should have provided the council with the option of addressing these problems before committing all the sales tax for many years. The election results would have been quite different if voters knew that a large tax increase was in the offing. Maybe I don't have the best solution, but the discussion should be started to figure out what happens when 2.8 doesn't pass. Because punishing the citizens until April so that a tax can pass isn't going to work. My second topic for tonight is I see you're having a budget meeting tomorrow. I request in the spirit of open meeting laws that you record the meeting. Mayor Marbury.
And the next speaker is Chris, and I'm sorry, I can't.
Rucker.
All right, thanks, Chris. And please state your name and address at the podium.
My name is, good evening, Council and Mayor Marbury. My name is Christopher Rucker. I live at 1140 Carbon Junction here in Durango, and I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Homes Fund. I'm a recipient of a Homes Fund program, and I have only great things to say about the program, and it gave me the opportunity to essentially pursue my American dream. I have something written here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a CPA. I work as a financial controller for a small local restaurant group. I'm the father of 2 wonderful kids. We moved to Durango in 2010. And as I'm sure you all know, it's difficult to be a first-time home buyer here in Durango, particularly when you are living on a single salary. So it makes you consider what your wages would buy in a community with less robust property values. And so it's such a wonderful community. You want to stay here, you want to experience it. And so to have an opportunity for an organization like the Homes Fund to step up and be able to provide just that seed money essentially to be able to step into your first home is absolutely wonderful. That's why I want to thank Lisa and her staff at the Homes Fund for their help. Also the help of some patient realtors and lenders who were able to help me leverage my own rather meager funds in order to come up with a proper down payment. I was able to close on a townhouse in April, and I've been smiling ever since. So I just want to take this opportunity to publicly thank the Homes Fund and the council itself for their support.
You know, I really want to thank you for ending this on a positive note, and congratulations for being a homeowner. I so appreciate you taking your time away from your family to come tonight.
Thank you.
We are moving into a public hearings. The City Council provides an opportunity for citizens to provide formal input into City Council's decision-making process. The format the City Council follows for public hearings is organized to ensure transparency and fairness to all parties involved. The public hearing portion of this meeting will end at 9:30 unless otherwise extended by motion. The City Council welcomes all public testimony. And did we have anyone signed up, City Manager? All right. Well, then our first quasi-judicial hearing is to consider the Mountain Trace Plan Development Amendment. Mr. Rosa.
Thank you, Mayor Marbury and Council. This is a public hearing to consider a request from Mountain Trace Holdings LLC, represented tonight by Elizabeth Boone of Reynolds Ashton Associates, for consideration of proposed amendments to the previously approved 78-unit Mountain Trace Townhome Plan Development, which is located on Metz Lane. The proposed amendment would add 6 additional residential townhome units to the project, bringing the total number of units in the project up to 84. The proposed modifications would occur within the currently unbuilt portions of the project, primarily on the eastern portions of the site. The additional units would be made through building design modifications that would reduce unit sizes, provide fewer large 3-bedroom units, and more but smaller 1- and 2-bedroom units than were originally proposed in the approved project design. These proposed changes are apparently at least partially in response to market demands for smaller units, smaller 1- and 2-bedroom units. This is the vicinity map that shows you where Mountain Trace is located. This is East Animas Road, County Road 250. This is 32nd Street, going back into town. This would be Metz Lane, which is right at that intersection. Metz Lane serves this Mountain Trace development, which is located in this general area right here. The blue area outlined on the vicinity map is that portion of the approved project where these proposed changes would take place if they are in fact approved. This is the approved layout of the project. These units have been built. These units have been built in here. These are also constructed. This is primarily the area where the changes will take place. What's happening, and I'll go through these specific changes, this is Metz Lane going from 32nd Street out through the project. On the northern portion of Metz Lane, there are currently approved 5 units in 2 buildings, buildings D and E. What will happen here is building E would be eliminated, which is a 2-unit duplex, and one of the units would be combined in this building, making a slightly larger building footprint, but with 4 units instead of the 3. So there's, in this area, a loss of at least one of the units. We think this change is a real benefit because what it does is it eliminates this building that encroaches into a pretty steep hillside, reduces the hillside encroachment, and also eliminates this situation where the vehicles from this unit would back directly out onto Metz Lane. And Metz Lane is intended to extend and be developed to eventually connect back out to Florida Road. So this would be a through street back out to Florida Road. So we think that's a real positive. Building F, which is located right here, would be increased from a current approved unit count of 6 to 7 units. Building G, which is this building right here, will be slightly altered in location to open this up. This is what's being proposed. So this building would move over here so that it could provide a future connection for development on this property adjacent to the Mountain Trace project, which is currently owned by the current developers of Mountain Trace, and they do intend to have development on that property. So this gets repositioned, and it also increases from 5 to 6 units. Building H, which is located, I believe, right here, would go from 7 to 9 units, an increase of 2. Building J would go from 5 to 6, an increase of 1, and building over here, K would increase from 5 to 7 units. Again, that's how they propose to have these unit modifications made. And again, this is not going to change substantially the footprints of the buildings from what was approved, the locations of the buildings from what was approved, and will not change the ratio of impervious surface to the open space area. And that's been verified by engineering information provided by the applicants and accepted by the engineering department. The Planning Commission heard this request at its September 24th meeting. There was some public comment. It focused mostly on some concerns about the accuracy of the perimeter surveying of the property, but also some concerns about the potential for additional traffic impacts related from additional units within not just this project, but additional development that's going to happen. At the staff level, we don't believe that the 6 additional units being requested as part of this proposal will substantially impact the traffic at the intersection primarily of East Animas and 32nd Street. But we are aware of the concerns about traffic, and there are going to be some fairly significant looks at the traffic impacts when we get the full development proposals for the adjacent properties, and there will need to be street improvements required in association with that. So again, the Planning Commission did hear this in September. They did recommend, after public testimony 3-0, for approval of the project, subject to the conditions that were identified in the staff report. You do have attached to your agenda documentation the vicinity map that was on the screen, the minutes, as well as the staff report and attachments from the September 24th Planning Commission meeting. You have several emails that came in during the public comment period from area residents, identified as the Uranos, the Lawrences, and the Wolkes. You also have written comments that reflect testimony that was presented at the Planning Commission meeting on the 24th from Ms. Wolke and Mr. Park. As far as fiscal impact, the city is already providing utilities and services to this 78-unit development. The addition of 6 additional units is not going to substantially impact the service costs associated with that. The city will receive some additional revenues in the form of building permit fees and utility fees and increased taxes from the development of the additional units. The development, multifamily development, is consistent with the comprehensive plan designation and is consistent with the approved Mountain Trace plan development. And it is the recommendation of the Planning Commission that the council approve the Mountain Trace plan development amendment to add the 6 additional units, subject to the conditions 2 through 4 as recommended by the Planning Commission. The first condition had to do with verification of the city engineering department that there was no change in the impervious surface in the development. Just real quickly, some of the other things associated with this. In addition to the additional units, the applicants will be making some amenity enhancements, including a small playground area and trails within the project. These are playground amenity in the Three Springs area that they're going to try to pattern this after. And these are the building designs, the elevations of what is now being built and what will be built as part of this project. Elizabeth Boone is here tonight if you have any questions of her. And as of now, I do not see any of the neighbors that were present at the Planning Commission meeting. So I can answer any questions if you have any.
Yeah, in lieu of the neighbors not being here, actually, I just wanted to see, Ms. Roser, if you would comment on the concern that was repeated a couple times here about survey issues. If you could just tell me what that is about.
Yeah, and it was primarily Mrs. Wolke, who lives on Allen Road, which are the properties in this general area out here. And the Mountain Trace development, or the original development, is in here. There have been a number of surveys done on property in this area over the years, and I think anybody who's ever had property surveyed or had their neighbor's property surveys knows that potentially there's always going to be some issues, depending on the surveyor, with the placement of pins and where property corners are, and that seems to be the concern that is existing in this situation. There have been a number of historic surveys on a number of properties out there, and there are slight variations. The pins I've seen are all within a couple of feet or a foot of one another. There's no real discrepancies, and Josh Castleberry with Marino Surveying testified at the Planning Commission hearing that while there are overlaps, there are no overlaps that are not in the favor of the adjacent property owners. Most of the overlaps are to the detriment of the Mountain Trace Holdings property. We've done some very preliminary evaluations at the city staff level, both with the planning department and the engineering department, and we're comfortable that the pins we found out there reasonably reflect the lot lines of the Mountain Trace property, especially as it relates to the Allen Road properties, and that Allen Road is where it needs to be and is within the easement that is designated for that. One of the concerns Ms. Wolke had was there's a drainage ditch in this, or drainage pond in this general location that she felt may have encroached into the easement that the Allen Road residents have for that property. We don't believe at the staff level that that's the case. None of this surveying, this boundary issue, really affects the location of units within the proposed modification of the project, and we're comfortable again with the recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Just for the record, I am opening the public hearing. Are there any other questions by council?
I do have a question. there are a lot of homes in there, and there is one way in, only one way out. At what point will it trigger a light for that intersection?
I can't really tell you about the light at that intersection. That's all set by engineering, what they call warrants and those types of things. The county several years ago made that a four-way stop intersection that and I'm talking about the intersection of 250 and 32nd Street and Metz Lane.
Yeah.
The county has plans to improve 32nd Street out to that intersection and Florida Road back to where the city has done the improvements. Yes. I think long-term, everybody understands that there probably will need to be a light at that intersection, especially if something happens further to the north out in Animas Valley. What the city does have planned is that Metz Lane that now comes off of this intersection area with 250 and 32nd and comes in this way does extend all the way through this property. There's a right-of-way that's been dedicated through the adjacent property, and the intent is that it will come up and connect back out to Florida Road. Right now, it physically connects with Florida Road and has been developed to the extent that it serves as a secondary emergency access. It's not chained off or anything, but it is available for residents in this area to get out if they need to have another way to get out. When this property adjacent to the east begins to develop, which it will, we're going to be seeing within the next several months development plans for at least the two properties immediately adjacent. One of the requirements of that development will be that they complete that street extension out to Florida Road and make whatever improvements might be necessary at that intersection. We think that's going to relieve some of the pressure by providing multiple ways in and out of these properties, and may reduce the need short-term for a signal at that intersection. But when a signal might be necessary, I can't tell you. But at some point, it's been envisioned that there would be a signalized intersection.
Thank you for that explanation.
Any other questions by the council?
I would just comment that we saw a property action maybe 2 years ago on, I believe it's the property where this Metz Lane would then reconnect with Florida Road. And at that time, there was this blank. And when I was reading through the agenda documentation, I was delighted to learn that, in fact, that adjacent property in between is owned by the same people who intend to develop it in the fairly near future.
I think what you're referring to is the comprehensive plan amendment to change I think it was the Milton property, from medium density to high density. The owners of the Mountain Trace project have acquired that property too, so it will be the former Inge and former Scott properties in here, plus that property that you'll be seeing development proposals for in the upcoming years.
And so that also means that the road will be fully up to city standards all the way to
we will require, as of right now, the staff discussion is that what will be required when this property adjacent immediately to the west, any more development is going to trigger that road being put through as a full city street section.
Excellent. That's good news.
Yeah.
And the other questions I had have been asked here, and I thought the responses both at the Planning Commission and here tonight were, clarified them sufficiently.
And Elizabeth is here if you have any questions of her own.
I think it's a very exciting project, and certainly the future city councils will have more projects coming from this developer. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask for a decision by city council.
I will move that we approve the Mountain Trace Townhomes Plan Development Amendment to add 6 additional townhome units subject to the conditions 2 to 4 as recommended by the Planning Commission.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Patine?
Yes.
Councilor Wine?
Yes.
Councilor Brookie?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. We're moving to a public hearing to consider the Lightner Creek Village 1 storage condominium plat.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Scott Shine with Community Development. We have what we consider as a relatively straightforward cleanup item related to condominium development out on Highway 60 West. This project was called Lightner Creek Village 1. It was built about 10 years ago, 2008. And as part of construction of this 35-unit residential condominium project, there was an accessory building that was built with some ground floor garages and then upper story storage units. Since that time, all of the condominiums have been owned by one individual. And so it hasn't really posed a problem on how the residential units use the storage or the garages. That owner has been able to dictate the terms of that. That owner now wants to sell these residential units and tie the storage units and the garages to specific residential units. So in order to do that, they need to condominiumize this garage building, which is not a very exciting condominium project, but we'll get some garages and storage units. One of the things that we were most concerned about is, at a staff level, was making sure that these garages, storage units could not be conveyed separately from the residential units, that they were tied together, and it was very clear in the title work and the deed that they were transferred together. And so to accomplish that, the applicant's attorney has drafted some amendments to the covenants to make sure those things are conveyed together. A bit more of the context. This is the property out on Highway 160 West. This shows the zoning in the area. There's a mix of commercial and medium density residential zoning out here. And then you can see the building that has all the rectangles, the red rectangles, that's been condominiumized already. And then the circle building is the garage and storage building that will be split up based on this condominium plat. And this is just an aerial view showing what the building looks like. The plat for a condominium, as you know, is sort of three-dimensional plat, divides up airspace. So we have a draft plat from the surveyor. We've done an initial review of that. Apart from some minor edits, it looks like the plat is pretty straightforward and complies with all of our land use and development code standards. And like I said, there will be 15 storage units and 12 garages that will be created. This is just an excerpt from the amendment to the covenants explaining how the accessory units, either a garage or a storage unit, must be appurtenant to a residential condominium unit, can't be conveyed separately. There's also language in there that restricts the use of those units. You can't use that garage or storage unit for a home-based business or storing hazardous materials, things like that. So we feel like we're pretty well covered. Like I said, we reviewed it based on the land use and development code standards and find that it complies with these standards. We've posted and noticed the property, and we didn't receive any public comment. This also went to Planning Commission late September, and they unanimously are recommending approval of the condominium plat. So again, kind of a cleanup to an situation that enables this property owner to convey these condos and create separate ownership in that building. So we're recommending approval with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing. Are there any questions by City Council?
I had one question, or just a clarification or confirmation, I guess. There are more residential condos than there are either garages or storage units. So the owners of those other residential units do not partake of this at all.
Correct, yeah, and if you'd like the applicant's attorney to speak to that, but in the draft covenant amendment, there's a table that shows which unit gets which storage space, and there's some blanks for residential units that don't have access to any of those, either a garage or storage unit.
So it's basically, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, and probably those units are less expensive because you don't get the accessory unit.
I'm going to close the public hearing if there's no other questions or comments and ask for a decision by City Council.
I'd make the motion to approve the condominium subdivision request from LCVB LLC to create garage and storage condominium units in an existing building at the Ladder Creek Village 1 development, subject to the conditions of the staff report.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Councilor Brookie?
Yes.
Councilor Patine?
Yes.
Councilor White?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Musa?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. And we are moving into council reports and actions, and I'm going to begin by asking the city manager. He has a report and also, I think, some sales tax and lodgers tax as well.
I do. And I didn't bring the report with me, so I'm going to go by memory, but the sales tax for the month, and this would be August sales, is down 0.1%, and year-to-date sales tax is about 1%, so we're in the positive. Lodgers tax continues to suffer, and I believe year-to-date it's down around 6%, and for the month it was down around 13%.
My gosh, oh golly. Okay, and you, I also asked you, the city manager to prepare an apples and oranges presentation. There's been some discussion about Durango being compared to our sweet neighbors in Montrose. Well, we're not Montrose. And so the city manager has some information to share with our community. Well, he's gearing up. I'm just going to remind people that the library sale is November 2nd and 3rd, and also the Highway 160, you will be directed into single lanes until about the end of where it looks like. Be patient. The concrete has been poured and it's curing. And so that is why you're asked to move into single lanes. Drive carefully and be safe out there. City manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. From time to time, we witness the input from members of the community, and sometimes it's important for us to explain the reality in a truthful way of the city of Durango and how it compares with other communities. And for the purpose of this discussion, it's apples and oranges. The city of Durango is similar in some respects and has differences, and I'll go into some detail. If you look statewide, there's, I think, 271 cities and towns. There are 4 that, if you want to group together in terms of population, that I'll address. They're all about 18 to 20,000 people, and have some similarities. And those would be Montrose, Evans, and Golden. And for those viewers who are not familiar, Montrose is about 2.5 hours from here. It's another very attractive Western Slope community. And the city of Evans is a suburb of Greeley, so it's in Weld County. And Golden is in Jefferson County. It's the county seat of Jefferson County, so it has that similarity. It also is the home to Colorado School of Mines. And I think the population is very close to Durango. So since Montrose was used recently as a comparison, let's just take that for the illustration of apples and oranges. There are similarities. Both communities are home rule cities. They operate under the council manager plan. They've had very stable governments. I think the city council has met with Montrose council members. I know the mayor of Montrose has hosted meetings of mayors on the Western Slope. So many of you are familiar with Montrose. Their population is slightly bigger than ours, but the county that they're located in is smaller than La Plata County. I believe La Plata County is probably half again as large in terms of population. So there are differences between the two communities, and in the case of Durango, represented by the apple,
The size of our general fund is larger, and the number of departments we have is greater, and that influences the size of the general fund. You've heard me say in the past that the array of services and departments under the city's jurisdiction is greater than almost every other city in the state. Fort Collins being the city that has as many municipal services. They have a couple exceptions to Durango. One is they operate an electric utility, but they don't operate the airport. So if you're counting up numbers, it's pretty close. But back to these two communities, Durango has 349 total full-time equivalent positions, and that is the 2018 budget. Montrose has 161 full-time equivalent. And it's important, again, for us to repeat that the general fund is different from enterprise funds. Each enterprise fund operates as a business. So the 349 FTE includes our enterprise funds. Earlier today, you had a joint meeting, special meeting with the Board of County Commissioners. One of the presentations was Tony Vicari and the airport, and you heard the number of employees that are part of the airport. So when you look at the population, does that tell the full story here? So if I want to just divide one number and another and get a per capita, population does not tell the full story. Both Montrose and Durango are regional centers, but our daily population, I always use a figure of 32 to 34,000 people a day. And when you think of being a tourist destination, we have the train, we have Purgatory and Mesa Verde. Those types of tourist attractions are not present in the Montrose area. We also have Fort Lewis College, and I believe Montrose has campuses, places you can take classes for Colorado Mesa, but they don't have a residential campus with 3,300 students and faculty and support staff. A college town is a different dynamic than a non-college town. And you heard the chief earlier talking about daily population counts and the size of our police department. And for these reasons, population is not necessarily a good indicator of a comparison. And does the number of employees indicate the full story? And again, if I divide one number into another and get a per capita, that shows I'm good at math, but pretty poor at analysis. Durango has a gold medal recreation department, and it's robust. We have 2 dedicated half-cent sales taxes that fund many of those operations under the Parks and Rec department. Montrose doesn't have that. They have a recreation district. We have a transit system, and there's a 501c3 that operates, a nonprofit operates a transit system in Montrose. We have a library. They have a library district. We operate the airport. They have a county-run airport. And in general, because of our population on a daily basis, some of our enterprise funds are larger. We produce more water. We treat more wastewater. We pick up more trash in terms of volume. So all of those things indicate why our FTE numbers are greater. And then some of the apples to apples that we should spend a minute talking about would be related to the 2019 proposed budget that I presented to you on September the 25th. There is nothing in that budget that punishes citizens. I want to repeat that. There is nothing in the 2019 budget that punishes citizens. We're still going to plow the streets. We're going to put stripes down the middle. When you call 911, a cop's going to show up at your door. But if you read the budget message and if you've paid attention, that's not sustainable. Right now, it's the capital projects that have come to the fore that the council has reacted to by placing the 2A question to address capital. We don't see any change in operations until 2020. And if you go back last year and look at where we were predicting we'd be, it was 2020 that those lines crossed for operations. So trying to scare people is not an honest way of doing things. So the 2019 is not punishing anybody. It has 1.8 million in the street maintenance accounts. There are no capital improvements for streets. There's no money for a police station. $3 million from what we would call general fund goes to the fire protection district. There is a new tax, which could complicate things if we included that. That just passes right through. We collect, pass right through Durango Fire Protection District. There's no other capital maintenance, and there's no additional police and code enforcement staffing or expenses. If we had, after the election, if 2A is successful, the street maintenance will go up by about 1.7 million, or no, 700,000, excuse me, to 2.5 million. Street capital projects would be about 2 million. That would include Thomas Drive. Hopefully we can get that done at about 1.2 million. Police station debt service, about 2 million. Fire protection district would be paid from the new 2A money, freeing up 3 million of existing general fund money. And other capital maintenance would be about 800,000. And police and code enforcement could add staff and add services because we could use about 1.1 million out of that 2,000, out of the 2A money. And I would point out that the city council has yet to decide that, and it would be a decision of the council based on need. So you have a list of projects that, again, are in great detail. I'm going to get to that in another slide. But the other thing that we have to keep into account is the fund balance for the general fund is not adequate. We don't have a contingency. In the 2019 budget, I believe we have restored a contingency of about $40,000. 40,000 out of 40 million is not adequate. But right now we have zero. And also in the 2019 budget, I believe the unencumbered, unallocated fund balance is around 269,000. And that is in addition to the 15% fund balance that by policy the council asks us to maintain, and the Tabor Reserve. So Montrose, I believe, has a $10 million fund balance, which is extraordinary and reflects good management. They haven't had to do what we've had to do to exist. They've gone through some tough times. But in terms of the ups and downs, I think they were not to the extremes that we have experienced. Oil and gas comes to mind, and proximity to New Mexico and the leakage that goes to New Mexico. You don't drive from Montrose to shop in Farmington or San Juan County. So if you want to get some information on street projects, we have posted since September on our website a list of all projects. And it's at this address, www.durangogov.org/streetindex. That shows the community that we have done our homework. We did a pavement condition index. And on the right column, just a couple examples. They're in categories. A complete street would be Thomas Drive, because that street has failed, and we have to build it up from the road base up. Reconstructions would be Turner Drive, Subtle Street, Sanborn. An example of overlay would be Junction Street or 9th Street. Surface treatments, Florida Road, Confluence Drive. Confluence Drive's out in Three Springs, so the public may wonder, well, that's a new street. Well, yeah, it is, but it's probably 15 or more years old, and when you consider the traffic that's in that area, particularly construction traffic, the whole point of a pavement condition index is to address maintenance at that interval where the dollar goes the furthest to prolong the street. So if we resurface that, we'll extend that life another 15 years. Alleys are addressed and ADA ramps are addressed. And there's some confusion about all this money that's sitting in the bank that we could be using for other things. And we have 2 dedicated half-cent taxes. Both were voted on by the public. I believe the 2005 tax was approved by about a 3-to-1 margin. The 2015, I think, had 75% voter approval. And for all of these projects, pretty clear to me that we have that detail. And if there's folks at the podium or writing letters to the others say there's no detail, I wonder how hard they tried to find this information, because it's all over the place. So in conclusion, things are not always what they seem. And comparing apples to oranges doesn't make for good analysis. So, subject to your questions, that concludes my report.
Well, I'm just going to read some of the failing streets. I read in the Durango Herald that there wasn't a list of projects. Here's some for you. These are failing streets: Thomas Drive, North College Drive, Animas View Drive, Junction Creek Road, Clovis Drive, Sawmill, Forest Avenue, East 8th Avenue, College Drive to East 8th Street. It's just a few. There's 24 pages of the paving index for your leisurely reading. I have a few more to read. These are called reconstruction. That means they need ADA ramps and probably some sidewalks. Narrow Gauge Avenue, Turner Drive, Subtle Street, Sanborn Place, Weston Drive, Alamo Drive, Park Avenue, Montview. So when someone says in the Herald that we don't have a complete list, I'm chortling, because I do have a list, and there's a long list of projects. We will be discussing also why you don't rob the Parks and Recreation sales tax and go to pay for a police station. So I'm going to continue on with a couple more projects that we're going to talk about, besides the concrete curing over on 160. I've asked the City Council to address the 2A issue in more detail. And so, who would like to begin? I'll begin with the Mayor Pro Tem. She's going to talk about why you don't strangle Parks and Rec funding.
Well, I would, we spoke about this at our last City Council meeting, and I recognize that really no one likes to talk about tax increases. It's not a topic, but one of the things that I'm hearing in the community is that people do recognize the need for the projects, and there's, I think, general agreement that we need these basic infrastructure, core foundation elements in our community, that they've been deferred for a long time, and it's time to address them. There is question, and there is some dialogue happening about different ways of meeting that need. And the one that I'm addressing is this desire or discussion to potentially consider reallocating the funds from the dedicated Parks and Recreation funding sources to these other initiatives that we need to have funding for. As you saw on the list that our city manager presented for us, there's been discussion that we're accumulating funds and that we should consider taking those funds and allocating to some of these projects. But just the way the whole process works when you're completing these projects is that you have to accumulate the funds first. And then, as you saw in the slide that our city manager presented, then that following year you get, or 2 to 3 years out, then those projects get completed. So it's not that we have extra funds in these projects. For example, for the Parks and Recreation half-cent sales tax, after serving on the Parks and Recreation Board, there are over 40 identified projects that our community would love to see us get to at some point. Generally, this fund raises about $4 million a year over 20 years. That's $80 million. The value of these projects that have been accumulated and driven by our community, because there's such a high value placed on these community projects, is close to $200 million, which will never happen. It can't happen just from this half-cent sales tax. We have to prioritize and make those projects happen as they can get done. And so right now we're working on the River Trail completion, Oxbow Park. There's lots of different things, as you saw on that list, that we're trying to get to. So none of us on council thought that it was a good idea to go back to the voters 2.5 years later after extending this sales tax and ask them to reauthorize it yet again and say, we recognize that you thought it was very important, it was passed 3-1, and now we change our mind. We didn't think that that was in the best interest of our community, as we recognize the importance of Parks and Recreation to our economic well-being and environmental well-being. So I wanted to share that. And then there's also the 2005 half-cent sales tax, and that's the other that our city manager referred to in this discussion. Half of that goes to debt service for Fullerita Road and the library. The other half is for open space preservation and development and maintenance of trails. $500,000 of that is already being allocated annually to the open space preservation. What we learned through this public process is that people really want us to maintain what we have. And so we didn't want to give up that funding and not be able to maintain our open space. We feel it's very important, and we heard from people that they want us to do that. I would like to suggest that I agree wholeheartedly with the recommendation that at the end of this process, we should evaluate what we've learned. This has been a big community process. We have had significant public input from our staff in gathering information from these community forums and public meetings. But we do need to evaluate, step back, evaluate what we've learned, messaging that we've received from the community, and just evaluate the process overall. So I would suggest that I completely agree with that recommendation. And one other thing I'd like to add just to council is based on the recommendation that we consider recording our budget work session tomorrow. I would like to have that discussion with council prior to that meeting start tomorrow. Just in that we have a very good process that we go through. It's detailed. It's very I guess I think it would be a very good opportunity to educate the community on some of the process that go on behind this massive budget process. So I'd love to have that discussion tomorrow if there's council support.
Thank you. Councilor Berkey?
Well, yeah, I just want to reiterate that the concept, it's been widely written and suggested by certain elements in the community that we rob, that we just take a simple $2 million out of this Parks and Rec to dedicated sales tax funds, which were certainly not City Council's idea. These were citizen-initiated requests for Parks and Rec amenities and trails and systems, and those were, as was just mentioned, voted on 3-1. And so for the mere suggestion that we should go grab $2 million out of one or both of those funds for projects, that there is a long list of projects. They won't cover all those projects, but all the Parks and Recreation projects, and put that back on the ballot and tell those voters that worked hard to get those initiatives passed that we're going to give up on Parks and Rec and we're going to all of a sudden steal $2 million or dedicate your entire sales tax to some other thing like roads and paving our roads and city operations is simply wouldn't be supported, I don't believe, in this community, and is a massive switch and bait that those folks are asking the City Council to consider. I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think that would pass, and so I'm certainly not in favor of that. And I was also chastised earlier this evening by a citizen that said it was that I was creating fear mongering because I suggested that there was going to be a reduction in city services. As the city manager pointed out, that is the crux that launched us into this discussion when we saw that these lines crossing between income coming into the general fund and the cost of those services supported by the general fund. That occurred earlier this year, or about middle of last year actually, when we first discovered that trend and that deficit. So that's simply fact, and so you can't spend money you don't have. So in 2020, we will have a problem in this community, and there's a number of people at one of the forums we talked to, or I spoke to, that found that answer unacceptable. That I had gall to say that we would have reduced level of city services such as police, code enforcement, the number of times you get your street swept, and those kinds of things, and that's simply true. Certainly, as the city manager suggested, not next year. We have it covered for next year. But starting in 2020, there's going to be some hard decisions to make about how the city is run and the level of services provided. So vote for 2A. Thank you.
Councilor Bettine?
Yeah, Mayor, I was going to talk about the streets, but I feel like my thunder has been stolen a little bit by a great presentation by the city manager, so I'm not going to be redundant. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and just remind everyone that the reason we're having this lengthy discussion about 2A is exactly what Councilor Brookie alluded to here, is that in 2020, our revenue line crosses with our expense line. And the reason for that is very simple, and sometimes simplicity doesn't convey, but I want to say it again. Our revenues are predominantly based on sales tax. That's the largest portion of where the city gets its revenue. And sales tax revenues have changed very radically since 1982 when we last asked for a tax increase. And you all know that people shop online more, and a lot of that tax flies out of our community and is not captured here anymore. But our costs go up just like everybody's costs in their home go up to provide their utilities and to provide for their food and everything else that they buy. Our costs in the city go up just like theirs do with inflation. And of course, the city is growing. You saw some numbers earlier tonight that the police chief indicated how much the city has grown. So we have to keep up with inflation, we have to keep up with growth, but the sales tax is flat. So we have to resolve that problem, and that's the crux of the reason we're having this discussion. And I would just suggest to you that 2A will actually save you tax money. You will vote for it, and it will cost you money in your property tax and your sales tax in the short term, but in the long term, it costs between 2 and 20 times more to redo your roads and rebuild your roads out in the streets that we have versus to maintain them. And so that money will have to come from somewhere in the future, and that money will likely come from future tax increases if we cannot get this very marginal small tax increase passed this year. So 2A will actually save you tax money in the future, so vote yes for 2A.
And Councilor White?
I made some remarks earlier, which I won't repeat, but I did want to mention the interaction with the state transportation issues. Proposition 109 sends some money back into this part of the state if it passed, but it also takes away some money that's already allocated. So one of the 66 projects that are identified in Proposition 109 is the Farmington Hill project, and that is now fully funded. But this proposition would actually rescind some of that funding and replace it with this new bond issue. So one of the things about 109, it says, $3 billion towards our roads. It's actually rescinding 2 that are already allocated by the legislature. So the net is not much, especially when CDOT has a demonstrable $9 billion need. 110 goes further in that direction, but it's not at all guaranteed that it would pass. That would provide more money for Durango, $500,000 to $750,000 a year, which is a quarter to 3/8 of the money we've been talking about just to keep up the streets. We have not made any decisions about whether or not what we would do with the money that if it actually came to the city, it could be used for transit, which might be a great thing, subject to what our own voters tell us about our own streets. This is all part of the context of what is estimated to be $1 trillion infrastructure shortfall nationally. State for simply Colorado Department of Transportation, and that's $9 billion, that's well documented. And we're coming down to the city of Durango where, wow, if you add up, our $2 to $4 million a year, that's just here, and that's all the other municipalities in the other state. But it doesn't appear that the federal government's going to act on this. I saw a poll in the paper today that indicated that Proposition 110 is not likely to pass. And we don't know in any case. And it's saying, okay, take care of what we have, which is to say, take care of our own house. We can't depend on the federal government for this kind of assistance. It's unlikely that we can depend on the state. We need to take care of our own business. And I think it's real, we've been doing our very best for the last year to explain the situation to our constituents. These needs are real, and we're seeking to maintain our quality of life. And one of the other things is to say, okay, if 2A fails, all right, we tighten our belt a little bit, and maybe we can do a street project. But we're talking about a small percentage, okay, we can squeeze out by maybe leaving a vacancy in the police department or a vacancy at the library or something. But the library's been begging for 10 years for additional staff so that we could open on Sunday. We heard this afternoon that it would cost $400,000 a year primarily in staff and utilities to keep the library open that extra day of the week. But it's almost a brand new facility, and we're not using it every day when we could. People are surprised when they discover, oh, your library's not open on Sunday? Kids doing homework. I used to do it on Sunday night. I didn't often go to the library, but I didn't have a library as good or as conveniently located as ours. And so the incremental monies that we could squeeze out of the general fund budget to try to address some of these things simply are incommensurate with the need. We've had this year-long process. I urge people to go to the durangogov.org/engage and look at the details of the PowerPoint presentations that Amber Blake has made earlier through the year. The document, here's where this number of $8.5 to $10 million of need comes from. It's not like that's just being made up for the ballot. This is real. We've been struggling with this. And we are trying to act in a way that is commensurate with the need, and we are trusting our citizens to understand that and to respond generously.
I'm going to address what I believe is a very important need is our police department. You heard the chief talk earlier about his needs for more officers, floor space. Well, I read a letter that said, well, just build a second story on top of the 1950s car dealership. That may sound like a great idea, but the chief also said that he needs more space to park the vehicles of the officers as well as the black and whites that we see on the streets. And so in reality, that really won't work, building a second story on an outdated, inefficient building. And then we talk about, I read in the Herald where, well, sure, we love the police department, Mayor Marbury. Well, we're for the police department. Well, I guess there's that expression that says, put your money where your mouth is. And to me, that means voting for 2A. And that's exactly what I stand for. To say that if you don't vote for 2A, you really like the police department, but you're not sold that they need more room and more space. And I'm here to tell you, go through the police station, as the chief said, 2 people can't walk down the hall. The evidence lockers are stored in zircons. The technology, the cameras that the police officers need, the infrastructure, it's all there. The needs are real. We saw tonight Montrose. That was an op-ed in the paper, and we're not Montrose. We like the Montrose City Council, but we are apples and oranges. We live in Durango. And I have great faith in the people of Durango. Needless to say, the man at the podium tonight doesn't. And I'm here to say that I have faith in everyone that lives in the city of Durango, that they recognize, it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're 22 or whether you're 82, that you see the needs are here. It's a small sales tax and a small property tax. The city council didn't dream it up. We listened to the people, those 5,000 comments, those 45 meetings, and did a little property tax, which is going to cost me $13 a month to support the police department. I put my money where my mouth is. And so I have faith in everybody that's out there that's voting and listening. My neighbors tell me they watch the city council. I meet people at the grocery store, said, I saw you in your red jacket. You're right. These are people that pay attention to city council. And so I'm asking you to vote for 2A. Stand up for your town, invest in your police department, take pride in the city and the streets where you live, go to the polls, check off 2A, start at the bottom of the ballot, as the Mayor Pro Tem says, and then go up the rest of it. But take care of where you live. And with that, are there any other comments from City Council or reports?
I would just simply mention the ballot should be in tomorrow's mail. Right.
And I'm one of those eager beavers. I go, I get that ballot, I fill it out, and I go right back to the elections office. I have friends and family that take their sweet time, and you will be called if you haven't turned your ballot in. There'll be people on the phone saying, hey, Mr. Jones, get that ballot in, and the phone calls will stop when you get your ballot in. So I'm encouraging everyone to stand up and take pride in Durango. We have a great town. In fact, we were just in, what was the article I read about the top 12 places to be? You know, Durango's in the Smithsonian Magazine. Durango's in True West. We have lots to be proud of. And the city residents, they're smart folks out there.
Madam Mayor, I've got a couple of other
yes, please do.
unrelated announcements that I wanted to add. Just want to remind people, I continue to do here to here, but because the Steaming Bean is no longer open in the mornings, I'm doing that back here in City Hall in the City Manager's Conference Room Thursday at 11:30 if I don't have conflicting events. I want to mention that the Durango has received a award from the Department of Energy for being a Soul Smart community, which allows efficient permitting of solar installations. Kevin Hall received the certificate at the recent meeting of the International City Managers Association. I will skip most of the rest and just mention that on Monday the 29th at 5 p.m. in the library, and that's before our next meeting, there's a public meeting at the library to introduce proposed changes to the sign code. This is sort of last chance for public input on the proposed sign code, which is dealing with the complications that from a Supreme Court decision a couple of years ago that we cannot regulate signs on the basis of their content. And so there are some changes being proposed. This is one last chance for community input on that, which there has been in the past. And the managers are the mayor has already mentioned the diversion of traffic on Camino del Rio and Santa Rita Drive for the next 2 weeks.
Our next city council meeting will be in November, but it will be on a Monday. And election day is on Tuesday, so we will not be meeting. So stay tuned for our next city council on November the 5th, November 5. We'll see you back here. Tonight we are going to have on 12.1 a discussion and possible action concerning a motion to convene an executive session to determine matters relating to potential purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real property within the city of Durango as permitted in CRS 246402-4A. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion, Madam Mayor. And first, I did have one topic. I'd just like to shout out to this weekend there will be a the state mountain bike championships.
Thank you.
Sponsored by the Colorado High School Cycling League, will be held up at Ewing Mesa, or formerly known as Ewing Mesa, Durango Mesa. And that starts on Friday afternoon, but the crux of it will be all day Saturday up at Ewing Mesa. Public's invited, and it's a pretty cool thing. And to have not only a place such as Durango Mesa to host this thing, but it'll be mountain bikers from all over the state of Colorado have picked Durango for that venue. So thanks to, again, to Mark Katz and for having acquired that property to make this thing reality. With that, I make the motion.
And I want to say thank you for bringing, I had it on my calendar about the mountain bikers, so I know we'll have great families in town, and I'm sure that they'll enjoy our great Durango weather. I'm looking for a second.
A second.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Bateen?
Yes.
Counselor Bricky?
Yes.
Counselor White?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
And that, yes. And that concludes tonight's City Council. Thanks for watching. Have a great day in Durango.
Just hooking it up, just put it into the, one of the plugs.
Okay, can we get them on and show you?
Let it go.